I'd like to start with a small prayer which we learnt chant in our ashram. A small prayer which we learnt in our ashram. Sadhashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Now that's the verse over there. And this verse is repeated in many ashrams, in many traditions. And there are many versions of this mantra, this particular sloka. So I'm going to give you one more. Narayana Samarambham Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. And it's only appropriate that we're just a few days past Guru Purnima this year, that we honor the tradition of teaching, the unbroken tradition of teaching that's come to us across the millennia. And that is my teacher, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who passed away in 2015, with whom I had a very long association. My topic is on continuity versus discontinuity. The first thing I want to bring up is the apparent discontinuity between the Vedic and the Hindu. It's a very important topic. The Vedic is certainly an insider's term, insider in the sense Veda came from India, Bharat. It's a term of origin, it's a term of revelation, apaurushaya, as they say. And it's associated with Shruti, Rishis, Yajna, Upanishads and Darshana. And it brings to the fore mantra, rita, tapas, Brahman, Atman. And its primary association is with knowledge, wisdom, and spirituality. The term Hindu, however, has a slightly different connotation. First and foremost, it's an outsider's term. And many Hindus within the Hindu world have some difficulty with this term. Why are we using this term? And, they prefer Sanatana Dharma, for example. It also has a geographic connotation and even more so a colonial connotation. It got constructed. It's a big argument that Hinduism is a colonial construct. It emerged through the colonial encounter. And of course, the Veda unfolds into, beyond Shruti, into Smriti, Itihasa, Purana, Shastra, Agamas, and many other textual traditions, knowledge traditions that emerge from the Veda, the Vedic tradition. Of course, it further, blossoms into Murti Puja, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Shakta, so many other traditions, Smarta, Bhakti, Tirtha, Yoga. And of course, lately, it's even more associated with ethnicity, culture, civilizational concerns, and even political. So there is an apparent discontinuity between these two terms. And I just want to say a little bit more about that. But in the Mahabharata, there is a famous verse, Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupabhramayet. Mahabharata, verse 1.1.267, Gita Plus edition. And what it says is essentially the Itihasa and Purana tradition and everything that follows it is literally an exposition, an expansion, an elaboration of the Veda. Right? It's a natural unfolding of the Vedic revelation. This is what the Mahabharata says. Now, the colonial era scholarship has had a tendency, and continues in the academic circles, to focus on ruptures in this tradition. There are several key ruptures that I'm going to point to. So, for example, the Vedic, the Brahmanic, Vedantic, and the Hindu. Now, these are broad formulations. The Vedic, of course, in colonial era scholarship is associated with the first rupture, that is the Indo-European and the Aryan, which is a historical formulation. And through that comes the Sanskrit literature, Vedic sacrifice, early philosophy and poetry. And of course, it's tied with, it's wrapped up with the Aryan conquest of India, okay, historically speaking. Then, of course, there is the Brahmanic, which is born of the intermixture of the races. Because as soon as you propose the racial origins outside of India, you must account for the intermixture of races. That's a logical consequence. So Brahmanic is born of the intermixture, Brahminical, Brahmanic, whatever you call it. And of course, it's associated with the Itihasa, Puranas, and as some of the colonial writers have said, an unfathomably large, vast, grotesque, corpus of literature. Of course, it brought together excessive focus on ritual, Brahmanism, and the origins of caste, the racial origins of caste. So that's a rupture too, which is the intermixture of races that causes a rupture in this formulation. And then comes the protest against this, apparently. The protest against this Brahmanical ascent is the emergence of Buddhism and Jainism, which is formulated somewhat in parallel with the ruptures between Judaism and Christianity on the one hand, Catholicism and Protestant Christianity on the other hand. But it's the same template that's overlaid or superimposed on Hinduism. Buddhism and Jainism become this sort of heterodox movements that break away from the Vedic vision. And of course, they get that generates a very intense period of engagement with the Vedic traditions. There's philosophy, there's darshana, and the reabsorption of a lot of Buddhist and Jain ideas. And of course, it moves and unfolds in a different direction with bhakti, puja, and mandirs, the emergence of temple architecture, and so on. And unfolds into the regional variants, into various vernaculars, local traditions, and so on. And this is another rupture. It is essentially caused by the breaking away from the Veda and the reabsorption of the breaking away back into the Vedic fold. That's the third rupture. And then the Hindu is again born of another rupture, apparently, which is now based on the encounter with Islam and Christianity and the long period of engagement resulting in the colonial era, in the English language, the growth of religion, faith, reform, many new ideas that did not exist in prior eras. And of course, lately, the identity of the Hinduism, what is a Hindu? Hindutva, and the political association of the term Hindu with the politics of India. So this is broadly the framework of the ruptures. So there are 4 different ruptures here. Okay, I hope you can see it. The first is the Aryan invasion, which is itself a rupture. The intermixture of races, Aryan and non-Aryan, is the second rupture, which creates a completely new emergence. And then the reaction to that, Buddhist and Jain, and the reabsorption of that, Vedantic, all forms of Vedanta, Advaita, Visishta Advaita, and Dvaita, and so on. And then, of course, lately colonial, the Islam, Christianity, and the contemporary Hinduism. So this is a framework for understanding historically, what it means, what it means to be Hindu, and what it means when we say Hindu studies. These are the 4 disruptions that I've articulated here. Now, if you focus on the ruptures excessively, it creates a certain kind of scholarly engagement. It is also possible to focus on the continuity of this tradition in and through all these ruptures, right? So, if you look at the continuity, which is really extraordinary, from Vedic Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, it's just one continual flow across the millennia, really speaking. And, of course, it has encountered so many ruptures throughout that time. It has absorbed it, it has responded to it, it has engaged with these ruptures, has transformed itself and others in the process, and it is continuing to transmit across the millennia. So here, Vedic identifies the foundational revelatory corpus in the early sacrificial philosophical culture. Puranic defines the gradual evolution of the Veda, leading to multiple forms and expressions. Agamic expands the range of that expression and practice to diverse regional vernacular forms, and the Hindu collects and consolidates these diverse forms under a single overarching framework. So the diversification and consolidation is also natural processes within this unfolding. So now, from a contemporary perspective, Hinduism and Hindu studies denotes the broader historical culture and civilization that preserved the Vedic foundation while continuously generating new forms of philosophy, of worship, of art and law and literature and practice. That's Hinduism. At least that's how we are understanding it today. We recognize ruptures, but we absorb it and understand it as a part of one continuous unfoldment. I'd like to now reframe this continuity in these forms: revelation, declaration, clarification, elaboration, and celebration. Under revelation, you have Shruti, Vedas, what is Apaurishaya, Rishis, Mantras, Rita, Dharma, Yajna, and Tapas. Under declaration, you have the Upanishads, dialogues, Vichara, inquiry, the Brahman, Atman, Moksha, Samsara, Dhyana, Samadhi. Under clarification comes Darshana, Vedanta, Yoga, philosophy, Nyaya, Tarka, Yoga, and Tantra. Tantra will fit in multiple places. Elaboration, Itihasas, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, Shastra, Agamas, Bhakti, Gurus and Acharyas, Sampradayas. And finally, celebration, Mandirs, Shilpa, Vastu, Puja, Archana, Bhajan, Kirtan, Natya, Kala, Yatra, Tirtha, and so on. This is the continuum of the Hindu civilization, the Hindu culture. Okay? Revelation, declaration, clarification, elaboration, and celebration. And contemporary Hinduism, therefore, is neither a replacement nor a departure from the Vedic tradition, but its continuous historical expression and creative development. Okay, this is very, very important to frame Hinduism this way. Otherwise, we get stuck with a very simple notion of Hinduism being somehow, associated with the Hindutva movement, and it includes the Hindutva movement because politics can also be subordinated to dharma and to spirituality. That's what we mean by Rama Rajya. And that's what we mean by when we say Raja Ram. It is the political that becomes subordinate to spirituality and the dharma. So this is Hinduism, this is the scope of Hindu studies. At least as we are conceptualizing it. Now I want to go back to a very important verse here, the loss and recovery in the Bhagavad Gita. Evam parampara praptam imam raja rishayo viduhu sa kale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. It says, O Arjuna, the Raja Rishis thus received the signs of yoga in a continuous tradition or transmission. But with the long passage of time, it was lost to the world. I mean, if you think of how long ago Krishna lived, he was already talking about its loss and recovery, which is extraordinary. Sa evayam mayatedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. That same ancient knowledge of yoga, which in an earlier verse he says, I gave it to Ikshvaku, I gave it to Manu, and so on, which is a supreme secret I am now revealing to you, because you are my friend, you are my devotee, who can understand this transcendental wisdom. Okay, Bhagavad Gita. So the loss and recovery, the loss of knowledge, the loss of wisdom, and its continual recovery and restatement is one of the dimensions of Sanatana Dharma. And what makes it Sanatana is its continuous capacity to seemingly die and be reborn again. Okay. Now I'll just illustrate with the transmission through, of a more recent period, the last 250 years. The Bhagavad Gita comes to the West in 1784 through a translation by Charles Wilkins, who found a copy in India. 1784 CE to be precise, the very exact year when the Royal Asiatic Society of India was founded in Bengal. Warren Hastings calls the Bhagavad Gita a curious specimen of the literature, the mythology, and the morality of the Hindus, while commending the publication of Charles Wilkins' translation. In the early years, the Bhagavad Gita arrives in the United States of America, and you must all heard of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Walt Whitman. They absorbed a lot of this. And I'm just giving you a few figures. There's a lot more to be shared here. And of course, the text came before the Swami came. Eventually, the Swami came in the form of Swami Vivekananda with this very famous speech in 1890s. Here's a quotation from Swami Vivekananda. The Hindu concentrated on the internal world, upon the unseen realms in the self, and developed the science of yoga. Yoga is controlling the senses, will and mind. Our real goal is to cross all these intervening strata of our being and find Brahman. The end and aim of yoga is to realize Brahman. To do this, we must go beyond relative knowledge, go beyond the sense world. Swami Vivekananda's words. And then came Sri Aurobindo. He never came to the US, but his ideas did come in a flood into the United States. Spirituality is the master key of the Indian mind. It is this dominant inclination of India which gives character to all the expressions of her culture. In fact, they have grown out of her inborn spiritual tendency, of which her religion is a natural outflowering. The Indian mind has always realized that the Supreme is the infinite and perceived that to the soul in nature, the infinite must always present itself in an infinite variety of aspects. Sri Aurobindo. He was born in 1872, just a year before Swami Brahmananda, who was a guru of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And the many other illustrious figures, Ramana Maharishi, Swami Shivananda, very, very illustrious and impactful figure. Of course, my guru's grand guru, Swami Shivananda. Okay. Thirumalai Krishnamacharya, the doyen of yoga. Almost every form of yoga practiced in the world today can be traced back to Krishnamacharya. Paramahamsa Yogananda, a very important figure who lived here for many years. Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of my favorites, an extraordinary person who introduced meditation and original thought. The best. Anandamayi Ma, one of the women saints. I'm going to skip reading the quotations, okay? They are all very, very interesting ones. Indira Devi, Eugenie Peterson, who was one of the white American yoginis who absorbed and made yoga very popular in the West. Neem Karoli Baba, very famous, impacted so many people, in our own time, like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and many other people, Julia Roberts and so on. Shivananda Radha Saraswati, another Western practitioner of yoga. Swami Satchidananda, very famous from Woodstock. Patabi Joyce, Swami Chinmayananda. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and of course, this grand institution is a testament to his transmission. B.K.S. Iyengar made yoga very popular around the world. Baba Haridas, Mount Madonna Institute in California. Swami Rama, Himalayan Institute. Satya Sai Baba, who's underrated for the amount of impact he has caused in the West. Swami Vishnu Devananda, a disciple of Swami Shivananda, very critical figure in the popularization of yoga. Baba Ram Das, formerly Richard Alprecht, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, my teacher, Osho Rajneesh, and we come to our own times, Mata Amritananda, my 1953, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, Sadhguru Jagivas, and I can go on and on, okay. So the point, what is the point of this? Okay? The point is that this transmission is continuous and ongoing, continuous and ongoing. And nobody is orchestrating it. No one person is managing it. No one institution is managing it. This is the civilizational outpouring of that Vedic insight that keeps manifesting and remanifesting and reorganizing, rearticulating generation after generation after generation. And when we say Vande Guru Paramparam, what we mean is we bow to this extraordinary tradition of transmission, of which we have now caught a little piece of in our own time. And it's our responsibility to preserve it, to protect it, and responsibly transmit it to future generations. And I hope institutions like MIU, HUA, and CCA, and many others will play their role in this transmission. Thank you so much. Namaste.